This has been life for the past 2 weeks for the people of southern Idlib. And the bombing by Syrian government forces is carrying on.
Today marks the 15th day of the continuous onslaught by Syrian warplanes, mainly against the southern and eastern Idlib countryside. We've had more than 250 aerial raids. So far, 57 people have died and 200 civilians have been injured. I can distinctly hear the buzzing of the regime's airplanes pounding the area with bombs while doing this interview with you at this very moment.
And it seems it's the very young who are suffering the most.
The majority of those casualties are innocent civilians. Just yesterday, a massacre committed in Khan al-Sabil saw more than 12 civilians killed, the majority of which were children.
Hunger and cold compete with bombs and bullets as causes of misery here in this hugely overcrowded province.
We fled the heavy bombardment in Aleppo, leaving our homes behind, only to face the same terrible scene here in Idlib of bombardment and destruction. Where else can we go? We're living the same nightmare each day, alone and scared for our children.
Idlib's population has been swelled by the arrival of thousands of civilians and fighters from other areas of Syria as more and more rebel territory has fallen to government forces. Now Idlib is in the firing line.
Idlib is in a strategic location. It's on the border with Turkey. It is the main area that supplies coming through Turkey pass through in order to be deployed in the rest of the rebel-held areas in Syria. And therefore, if the regime cuts off the supply lines through Idlib, then it can significantly weaken rebels across Syria.
Infighting between rebel groups, some of whom are extremists, has weakened them further. After a long struggle, an alliance led by the formerly Al-Qaeda-linked Darayya al-Sham, or HTS, now dominates. It's accused of carrying out numerous war crimes.
These war crimes include the summary killings of civilians, especially activists, human rights defenders, beheading and the stoning of women, and also basically passing on unlawful sentences through their courts that do not meet any of international standards.
Idlib civilians haven't taken this lying down. Over the last year, there have been street protests against HTS's diktats. Local radio station Fresh FM has joined the rebellion against HTS's rule, defying their ban on playing music and using women presenters. But the station's founder fears that if President Assad's forces succeed in overrunning the province, his rule might be even worse than that of the extremists.
HTS is dangerous and it's not acceptable anymore. But the most dangerous and most than HTS is Assad regime. The Assad regime, which created the ISIS and created HTS and created all this terrorism.
If Assad's forces take over all of Idlib, will your radio station keep broadcasting?
No, no. They will burn it, they will break everything.
With the nearby Turkish border currently closed to refugees, the burning question facing civilians desperate to escape Idlib is where to go.
If there was attacks against civilians, they have nowhere to flee. They can't go to government-controlled areas out of fear of reprisals and attacks against them. At the same time, they can't cross into Turkey. So this would be another humanitarian disaster. And if it reaches that point, Turkey must open its borders to these refugees or people fleeing the violence.
Yesterday, 2 hospitals in the far south of Idlib were hit by airstrikes, further hampering the ability of doctors to cope with the growing number of casualties. A shortage of staff and medicines compounds problems caused by damage to equipment and buildings. But it's what might happen if government forces overrun the province that worries some even more.
This is a real source of concern for the entire world, because if the regime succeeds in its sinister offensive, it will commit crimes against humanity in Idlib. Even worse, if the borders are sealed, there will be a total annihilation of more than 2 million people living here.
It's yet unclear whether President Assad has the strength to retake the whole of this last rebel-held bastion. Though even if he does, many years of insurgency involving various rebel groups looks likely to follow before rebuilding this shattered country can truly begin.